Hello, everyone. It's me, Michael, and this is Bore Me to Sleep, the series dedicated to helping people sleep. More specifically, this video will lull you to sleep by boring you with unintelligible nonsense. For this episode, I'll be using vocabulary and sentence structure that vaguely emulates a reading on terms of service. I know this is going outside of our established academic theming, but I'd like to branch out and babble on about any and all topics that a good amount of us find boring, so that there's something for everyone. And don't worry, boring subjects are still the bread and butter of this series. The only difference is now, there will be some unexpected topics that you find work rather well for this use case. I've used machine learning to generate a monologue that doesn't make much sense in order to provide you the same comfort as falling asleep in a lecture. Please don't try to understand the script. Many people enjoy falling asleep to videos like this, but some can't as the material is too interesting. The words I say will vaguely pertain to the subject, but will be fragmented enough where a meaning can't be found. The effect created is a boring lecture where you can't understand or pay attention, even if you wanted to. Therefore, I suggest you get comfortable and try to sleep. Let the words wash over you and let your mind drift. If this video helps you do that, please consider supporting. Liking, sharing, and subscribing help these episodes reach other people that need them. By the way, Bore Me to Sleep is ever evolving, and I'm continuing to dial in my delivery, cadence, and overall sound. I try to make myself sound boring in these episodes, so let me know what you think. Ultimately, this project is for you, so your feedback is hugely appreciated and will be used for continuous improvement. For those who feel background music is a little too distracting, I invite you to listen to the standard version. It features my voice without any additions. I will now begin the lecture, so please enjoy and sleep well. Processes to create your organization. Please note some of your personal information or that otherwise processed by third parties to comply with the agreement to the extent applicable by law. Any and all other provisions or incorporated in this agreement or other liabilities for is authorized by a client and or payroll employee. Failure to comply with respect to such terms and the applicable will survive the expiration or expiration of this agreement. Any provision of any other terms of service that client is the bill of any additional cost and performing as the employment period, and an exclusive, free, irrevocable, and perpetual, and charge any additional fees and choose, such as hourly contract, or client also request that dispute assistance. If the client does not make a dispute arbitration by the arbitration based upon the parties set of the arbitration, the payment protection, affiliates under working classification, to payroll employees, client is seeking compliance with all undisputed amounts tax, and are deemed to not be a party to any other party, and if any and all applicable JAMS employment provider, the contract will be based on the date of the invoice generated by an hourly contract. A client makes and holds an irrevocably payments are not responsible for any dispute between clients. The company may attempt to resolve disputes. In no dispute assistance programs provided for a dispute between the client and will request a client with a leave or other action that is. Any disputed or relating to the client, including to determine the suitability of S terms or work on the site, client will not be paid any. Clients are conducting an S payment method on the hourly. Payment processing fees under the fixed price contract. Hourly bonus and expense payments, and pay fees if you choose not to receive a bonus or expense. Payment for debits, and if you both applicable instructions, you may call your contact with the account by the name of the arbitration or collective action of the class or action as the parties. 2.3 Cancellation by wants to cancel a contract with a client or escrow account. Clients will close the dispute along with any engagement of your information and may create a business or using contact information to the public or using the site. To the extent that you do not make the arbitration payment, you will not, or any moral or similar technologies in connection with any product or violation of law. The subscriber will be aware against all other compliance with this master subscription agreement is void, and shall continue by in writing to the terms of this agreement and the terms of service, and agrees that you will have the direct contact as applicable and does not and enter into or any other contractual obligations under this agreement, including means the work product. Work product is governed by to pay a weekly invoice to the dispute period, invoices, and determine that to be made by subscribers affiliated in our sole discretion to assist in its sole discretion, in order, including the history and site may also contain text you to receive, provide and relevant suggestions to contact. To manage this information and may be an organization with a website that you use account on these sites. We can also use the data for any of all steps that you make, accessing or other content. The content you would otherwise like to your voice input. If your voice data that identifies a server on or the user's account and the following first employee, client or pay does not provide the client to releasing invoice, and during the terms such as set forth herein, subscriber number 4. This master subscription agreement is by a writing and represents the subject to the privacy statement by you. You can find the location and the data through the app using is provided with your organization. You can add the username and site to provide the registration for a website of that event, a relationship with client. We also do not disclose personal information as necessary or sell personal information. You may close your account. We will still be publicly viewable through at the time solely or final employee and client agree with none of the respective. The limited exclusive jurisdiction, any such representations as to the parties as expressly agree to the extent permitted by applicable law. You further acknowledge and will be solely responsible for any services, work product, or completion of the service or purposes. Content, for example, your search queries and location, the software you will use, your device by visiting the site and the site services, including the site services, or any services, or the client, or any of their respective parents, subsidiaries, affiliates, or successors, including for each of their actual or manner provided under the subscriber under this section. With a relationship with you and respect to, and will immediately the request has the scope of the direct content. Upon completion or the client of the receiving party will be set forth into subscriber. Confidential information means any third party has received into work that is not under the obligation to make to work or work product to the work product, and any other data to this information about your organization. Please see this privacy policy is available for more information about you, brokers, our products, and use this data is limited. How we relate to use the communications. The service is a limited, you may contact your, if an account, such as a cable or your employer or school, management that has been protected through the site. Service fee to pay fees charged to on the client and escrow funds are released to charge. The client has agreed to the escrow account throughout the platform will be deemed to be and outside of the time, the purpose of such license at the time to the extent that it may be in a court or portion of a class action waiver in connection with a court of or competent jurisdiction is such no provision in this arbitration provision or waiver of any other country were used or in connection with services or services provided by in subscriber. Subscriber understands means the services payable to subscriber regarding a third party that the client's accounts of its obligations are will be illustrative only and is not intended to be guarantee that is outside of a state statute that is not unforeseeable The provision of this to claim that client is not responsible for the data we collect by our consoles, apps, games, and network to servers. No more information that downloads online activity on the device's particular apps. For 365 days, it is available to a service. Please see the address provided with sections of our privacy policy. For the purposes above can include the details of the websites you choose to operate, improve, and develop our software, also including a storage browser. Other digital advertising IDs, and will not process your IP address or your device information, and includes a payment of data in the event such that not either of you reserve the right to delete any profile after 30 days of in changes to the developer membership program. Membership program is necessary to use the site to receive payments and other taxes, including without limitation. If such limitation, users will comply with all costs for the engagement of clients, including without limitation and termination. Except as at the time billed, the enterprise and developer will be deemed to have paid by the dispute the period and does not resolve the disputes between parties. Then, in termination of this agreement, will be effective of the date of the client further software are free from, to subscribers, in compliance with the applicable engagement. Section 4 engagement records will be aware of a site, or any third-party website, or any information provided that device accesses a web. Please review the time of reinstatement. For example, a public phone will respond to information you with others. We will still be considered as required by data about the device's location. This data includes your device is stored with your address. You can control your data. You can control your personal account and have enabled and in settings on the internet, the location in the country or elsewhere, its elsewhere terms in the address. There may be agree to be in writing. Or if the user has an account, you hereby agree to pay for such payment protection, and all fees pay such tax payments or required to the extent necessary to the applicable client and affiliate, or as part of the applicable website, intellectual property rights in the location. The parties expressly set forth in this agreement, the work protection agreement and class or affiliate, any agreement or relating to this subject to any project terms or licenses granted by you these terms, you are not a user agreement or the service empties you and agrees that you are not authorized. It is agreed that escrow is only and irrevocably released to immediately release any funds associated with the escrow account to release the funds, where the escrow agent disputes by the dispute assistance program set forth in this initial funding dispute claims as an hourly or client is a valid and purchase and has a party with an indemnified party may collect or provide our discretion in connection with a service contract is governed by the following terms, and the terms are: and transferable right to use such content, such as content information related to an online service, such as a third party without 1 free to membership plans and without right, receive, or request. If the work product or is generally available to use, the platform for the public services, all software applications or installed on the site and site services may be subject to a premium technology into service contracts. 2 release payments to the following service fees for any other amounts owed under the client's engagement, that the use of the platform or engagement services, collectively other platform taxes on the site, and subscriber and payments, and against the subscriber will be responsible for any costs or related costs of, and the fees that is a single amount paid in the hourly contract. Or project may use certain features in the site, may dispute or the extent permitted by law or otherwise, in which is no modification or omission by the parties. The term or platform in the content, whether may not be responsible under the user of the dispute, except as an hourly rate via the site or a service if no currency conversion is covered by the arbitration. Dispute, binding arbitration and class action. as may be effective as set forth in the website. The extent permissible by law may not modify the disbursement of software, collected applications, and using the name you provide, and improve the data about your activities across websites or other apps. Taxes on a fixed price direct contracts, which is the occurrence of and supersede the terms of the agreement, which capitalized terms are not defined in the user agreement, shall have the direct contract in this agreement and the provision of the terms of service, or the applicable provision of this agreement. Hourly direct contract terms applied to the client instructions. Client confidential information does not limit it to information shared with information, such as the display of the site is an employer of that school or entity provided in an individual personal account. Confidential information may have been provided by the client and will have no obligation to pay fees to the extent those charged of the client may dispute the arbitration by the Dispute Assistance Program. Enterprise and escrow, release, escrow, or requests of bonus and expense payment method. We combine talent scout contracts with a service and to receive as your actions by marketing clients. Users may use our confidential information. We may not directly to third-party other websites. You will still have access to personal data as a business in which it is shared to the site terms of the service. Number 1. Hereby grants solely to the work for payment, such as set forth in the project, escrow, may include consent and to collect the terms of this privacy statement, not included in your materials information provided by the organization, and will comply with all such actions, including without limitation on confidentiality, and to turn off or on the site, including Windows, iOS, and understanding that our online gaming settings are accessing credentials you create and an enterprise and account and password for other tools we may collect by you. You or access to certain features of such products may be limited or required by law. For the payroll employee, retirement payment includes a payroll employee limited, such as described in this agreement. The claims as applicable to the extent permitted by law may amend the arbitration provision from this Exhibit 1 in addition. In the event of a relationship between client and client, is a receipt of competent jurisdiction and to be made in a part of which a project is an employee and further acknowledges and agrees that the users are not required to any agency, and you can use the information provided by that organization at any time to by any person, including we share the contact information and data collection by privacy and how is subject to privacy located in the country. Attachment, a separate protection rights and offset may applicable by law including but not to any or remove the content or any of any products on or other services. You agree that you are or become a service contract and your ability to provide the service information about your features and the mobile of the service of your device. We use the data associated with your account or other operational purposes. If you have a similar purpose, we may not copy or third-party content such as is made collectively, unless otherwise do not include, provide, or otherwise deliver the services, display, content, or agency account, which means an exclusive and all intellectual property and all other third-party materials or materials that have the obligation are not entered into an agency. The department of those using the API terms or as defined below, or you use work to the user's account. We will not send the user or user a photo as though otherwise a legal process as allowed by the law or the country accessing. We rely on the site and the website also post of a claim that we control the personal data. You can manage your contact information to contact us with their contact at the opt-out of our privacy. Personal data we collect about your interactions with you through the site services, through the site or services, including those services. Any application or any services or in connection with the use of content or does not responsible for any user, content, or others of the content, accuracy, and services to third-party content, that user's content or is not involved in any part of the dispute process. The country is defined in the address, this release, and the terms of this agreement, including the terms of service. This agreement, as the content of the site services, is necessary to you are and not entitled to use the software. It may depend on what you can contain other websites. Or your consent to share your party can also link your data in accordance with their laws, including federal data protection security requirements or other business. The tax purpose will not provide any claims for which is subject by law may be, if the date to you should any information about you to accept this future. If you do not receive an account, you may exercise your rights with rights, including the rights described to the above, may not include the work product or otherwise available in the S account. If the terms or the service of service client wants to enroll in a dispute with an hourly invoice pursuant to these hourly direct contract terms, and if client initiates a direct contract, escrow, or escrow service, fixed price escrow accounts, and escrow instructions. Direct escrow contracts include client escrow provides an account. Arbitrations agree that escrow is authorized and has no obligation hereunder, or any party or the party to the service. Neither client nor the company has any authorized to its authorization and benefits or an applicable. Does not work product to provide any payment to use the service and subject to our business. Developers may release, and you agree that escrow is solely for the dispute or a client is given. The client's work product for determining whether or not it is made by our service, if no employment provider is made available, the need to provide any registration or similar features you submit to provide with you. We may provide you and process your IP to process as you. If you have a right to a request with a potential information or company of the service, the client is not responsible for the performance of any services or make any funds only, including without limitation the fees as described in this section. Use of the rights, materials, and otherwise. Use of the platform that is an employee or otherwise provide to the client or any intellectual property and client including any way without limitation, the obligation to provide the services, to participate, make recommendations as a profile, using your personal account, or client may use, but is not limited to any person or that application content in use or access to process. The user or content you from the site or any content that may material breach of limited, including the terms of the service or the API terms, will be the parties with respect to such other terms. If you agree to opt out without the notice of such class or collective written in any other jurisdiction, by any agrees such have make payment used by the client's method, will provide the client to make a payment on a longer seeking engagement throughout the platform. Clients acknowledge and agree that approval may enter into a new contract, such as required under these hourly. Apps have not had access to your work on your device and can be an account of the device and connected to the data we determine the performance of your device, and if you add your account to accept all products, and if you are, for example, personalization, you can control your settings on the hardware of devices by turning off block location-based speech recognition technologies will be based on the speech app when device automatically detects what will it be used for and generates a URL to provide this product. And if the completion of client's confidential information, subscriber's account for any other person or use of these purposes, for example. Interest related to the personal information, for example. We share personal data, the categories of personal information and disclosed by whom student reaches obtained by the link. Directly, you can contact recent location of personal data. If you no longer want to receive their account, for example, you may choose to send the search query to your search history, where it will be used. Even if the same account is used too, you can add via the service at any time, by our privacy settings at the Privacy Shield principles. To learn more about the collection of sharing of data, Learn more about the app's data, top of the page productivity services, no legitimate interests such as activities that include cookies, and for purposes and how to interact on third-party cookies. Or there, we need to share information about partners, such as described below, or how to manage and how it will be used. The notice of you will remove information, including composite information and information otherwise uses, information that has obtained from a third party, that you have a right or complain to a person to bring any information. You may have under one of this privacy policy, including without limitation changes to the client. Talent Scout Contract Escrow is available to collect from the client to the extent that any such person will be engaged, to close contract if the accepted by a payroll employee. The client will continue to pay to receive services. Account means any service contract, escrow and fixed escrow. The license to use the site to any information about how you agreed to make payments about yourself and can submit. To users agree to applicable escrow account. Client and agrees to provide funds to direct contract escrow. Client and fixed price direct contract escrow instructions. Fixed price contracts. Fees and have no control over the obtained such interests in any third party without respect to indemnify, without limitation, the obligation to the fullest amount, at which the subscriber's count does not apply to any third party optional service contract. 2. Explains the third parties. 1. Work protection number of making a payment from the direct contract. Escrow is provided under the terms and conditions of service. Intellectual property rights to and third party without limitation to the client's express written consent of a case by a client. Client is not an employee of or respective authorized and are not employees, and will comply with the client and will destroy all funds related to the client, including without limitation any intellectual property rights, and in the rights and not all intellectual property rights, such as client, without including limitation, may need request to that or client account at any time. Fees and authorize and expense payment from the client, cancel the contract fee and will have the client. Hourly payment protection for time upon the hourly rate, multiplied by the hourly payment for hourly report. Your employer or school provides you to sign in products with the account of those products you access, such as configuration and features in device-based advertising, and using your information such as personal information, name, contact, and information with your information, as the name and email address, and the number of the software and its relationships. You further acknowledge that it is not responsible for any required by law or employment provider. Subscribers with respect to the receipt of this agreement, the other party specified in the API terms. Confidential information explains personal information regarding will support ticket by using payroll vendors with your user. Accounts will be provided to be made by the platform and made not of any service or does not provide or services with the direct contract service, or cause to the client agree to a direct contract, or take actions by any other. This section explains that you will review the software at the time to the end date, your devices, and is not limited to by you, regardless of the case below, has posted to the confidentiality representations and to third party, that the other party may collect that information about you from you, such as service providers. Data may provide you access or work with the purpose of your personal information in a course. To pay on the behalf of a time to the dispute assistance is an attempt to charge client or an hourly engagement where such payments are based on services. Fees are the following processes when doing so. These do not have 60 calendar or other time of the device. The payroll employee is under fixed price contracts and subject to the escrow instructions or make escrow services, client and release. All amounts are governed by the terms and conditions of such release and project in, except as to otherwise provided. The term is available to the subscriber and will cease, and do not accept such terms if you do not accept these team builder terms based on the site. A grant, messages posted by or its business, or to enter into use or contract at the client's hourly contract. Instructions to pay for the service contract. If the funds are released in escrow, Escrow may, in accordance with applicable law, the arbitration will also be conducted or by a neutral third party in the arbitration rules and procedures will not be enforceable in this arbitration provision, and nothing in this agreement does not be the software or any may be used to provide any services, including the information about the company or app developers, products, and provide you with new services. For example, you may choose the browser email address. Cannot receive change the membership of our site or notice. You may not include prior notice or otherwise provide at any time, unless and otherwise, and in writing to the terms of apply to subscriber and other affiliates to use the platform, and to be set by a subscriber under this agreement. The effect to the cause for payment services are due except as a result of the receiving party. Subscriber, including without limitation by the identification number of records, your needs, or manner to any of the site or site services, or any activities that client must grant and grant rights. Your rights granted and the term of service of the site, while team builder terms, including by acceptance, will be part of the services, including the nature breach of the project, and also enable you voice commands to control your privacy, and settings you can use the location service, including by your account name. Using the data is subject to our processing of your IP. For example, we have access to certain features. Apps which are permitting by your data can also link your account, is an app and agrees to the account, is an authorized user and may share data to that, may include a data from the parent, or we link to, we will make your request to request that data from the content. We'll be making your account as you and can request. The location is generally being collected, and if you wish to opt out, we may collect the data service again. When you agree that if we are required to the terms of the recruitment or a party's relationship between client and services provided to the client, including any other actions or other users of third-party materials, that all content, including without limitation, any location of services or subscribers shall be provided on the service at any time after the providing payment for the conversion fee. The fees and employment provider have the processing of an order of developer agrees to the terms and the terms of service to use the team builder terms, without the same purposes of the terms of and the engagement, or the purposes as set forth in section 1, then any client agrees that pay will be authorized to pay client to the applicable method to the client S. If you agree to complete a project for the grant, your exclusive escrow is paid by the client, agent, and then agree that the right to a claim agent, agree and provide to the services contract, grant by activities interests, and activities based on our online speech recognition products may also be updated online intent to related to the privacy of service, including providing your account and privacy settings, including specific data collected required. You can use the web servers to create your computer and engage. You can enter into service contracts for each of a service contract or the service contract and the service, including by submitting certain written agreements or brought to exercise any such rights in the obligations expressly authorized in this agreement. Any written agreement that has appropriate to a court of competent jurisdiction, in which case of the case, and any escrow account hereby release escrow does not enter into agreement with respect to the terms of service. If you use the product, your inbox to the installation of posting, a list will be age of within the steps you have a data relating to your personal information that we share information about how to contact services, including and how to the site services, such as a job post or a job post platform prior to the platform. If subscribers show a valid purchase order number, we may not assign this data. Data we do not collect to provide you with the error browser and information you make choices that if you use the work to keep your password, we add to your account with your name. If you choose to add your account type and the link in one account on the site here, if you use the project terms you are not expressly acknowledging and or job posts for you, decide to collect development reports and other data required by their device at the time of your organization. but even with information about you on behalf of your personal data, such as information for receiving, or is the sole term as set forth in this section. To receive or notify you of the applicable, both will provide both clients to the escrow services and escrow only as escrow agents. The client agrees that escrow may be solely to be charged to use the hourly invoice under an hourly contract, subject to the hourly direct contract to work diaries under prior written authorization, and for any reason portion of the dispute assistance. Comply with all taxes, such damages or related costs and/or benefits. 6 is responsible for legal requirements and affiliates, including any independent contractor Section 5, and that material worker classification for a legal liability is made to be made. By subscriber must have no reject such time in the event already engaged have been engaged in the general work, including subscriber agrees to provide this statement in the event of conflict law provision and is not a party should be held to be provided by a dispute arbitration but not be conducted by the arbitration plaintiff, and will correct the fees amount from in the circumstances and the employee or file where is performing services or will actually complete, if completion of the developer application, any open service contract, full obligations in any agreement or any of its terms of service is defined in this master subscription agreement. If you are an affiliate or a business agency or any major or employment agency of the client, will cooperate with client profiles and to any and will have the right to be made in an exclusive all background technology and other provisions and all materials that the information will not incorporate from or client to the work product. Any provision of this agreement, client may terminate this agreement, its agreement by visiting its site to the grant terms of service. The terms of the service contract terms were provided by a user. If you do not accept such terms, and its right to will not sign any other actual or consumer payment. Legal Drive Suite, including the region-based speech recognition, showing up to date and applications. No party will have the following: the request receiving an hourly contract, and will return from the client in the dispute, without further and demand for assistance. Either has been provided under this agreement. Therefore, meaning of any service contract, either or employment provider for the failure to perform services in a contract for the use of the contract room. Hourly invoice to report, and if any dispute is subject to a dispute arbitration and limitations and dispute assistance program, and may be deemed to participate in the other terms of this agreement or the terms of service or terms of service contract. Users agree not, and any information or required service contract will not be associated with any agreement or during any dispute between subscriber and requests. For full force and effect, unless the parties as provided in Section 2.2 Termination 4, information and is responsible for which is a work product, and is not referred to or use of any service to the work product. Any talent scout agreement by one agrees that incorporate by this agreement and are not permitted hereunder, you will not supersede any rights to use the site. Suspension and termination of all fees or work product will be included in the work diary and related to client any payment to the start. This agreement does not apply to claims for unpaid and fees for any amounts owed under this section. Developers may use this license to access the software you may be publicly as a web form. You can use a variety of advertising from your computer and web beacons and other similar purposes processing personal information. Any waiver of any rights without a class action, waiver or an equity not, actual or authority of any confidential information, or otherwise disclose confidential information from. This will indemnify, defend, and hold harmless to all rights, and work the product and derivative works of. If you use a contract electronically, this arbitration service is available to third parties. The other section parties may be set forth in Section 14 by parties, explaining that you will use payroll, talent scout contracts, and user agreement as required by applicable to the individual, and the client has no agreed between you and client on behalf of what the clients are provided to this agreement, hereby granting to a written agreement the provision of your rights, prior notice to the ability to act the user that we will not remove the information, that it is not an individual or which is a part of the terms of service is subject to a fixed site. If any person who has been a, and we may use the starter project terms for this agreement in the entire agreement, will be published by anyone, and any person who is a party to the site and services in a timely and to use help provided to you with our legitimate interests. We may generally use these analytics provided to us, including to process your payments, payment processing and activities or other services as represent, and share your IP address, Office applications collect, and the network which browser information for the updated purposes of service as well, as described in the section of the features services. To enhance your privacy settings and data, we collect information about you and your device. If you use this agreement, such as search queries and the parties and the content, meaning the client makes a payroll employee for the employment pursuant to the service contract, will appear in the different terms on your browser. But if you use a profile, as such, you can also sign as a third-party app. You sign into your own account. The privacy more information about your device's data, about the other capabilities and device is used to storage, including devices and when apps have the online services from your device's settings. But you can also be used to provide automatically based on how we use the browser information to provide help. You, as your phone, or your organization can request the link to your application to your account from your email address provided. Though the name contact information in the domain that contains pages, the privacy shield, unless we store content that contains products, cookies are similar technologies, and similar technologies, please note that the help certain features, advertising, preferences, or an unresolved opt-out of page. Changes you are separate from the work before an independent contractor or confidential information contained in the independent contractor and confidential information that its relationship that or classification a reasonable authority to request a third party will not collect information about the hardware stored on the site and the device's service. Features will be default as date. You can keep the site or at the terms of any term and all rights therein. Complaints do not conflict the consumer arbitration rules and procedures under the JAMS arbitration rules must pay the portion of this arbitration provision as a fixed party. Any of the site services and developer software features, including hardware, device, and are sent to communicate with you to use or connected data, we may deliver to these features, such as written notice. You agree to that are required by law. Dispute assistance and deadlines will continue to be paid for the services. Subscriber's hourly contract and escrow is client, and to release that client escrow accounts, an escrow account, but is under the receiving has been entered on the site. Contacting us will allow you to dispute assistance to programs for a dispute. We'll have annotated the monthly membership fee. Fixed price escrow is subject to the escrow instructions. If client and determines remain in the event of any material, that is a claim for the site, and our licensors or third-party providers without limitation, all modifications made available to use the engagement in clients, including any in falsifying or agency members. If a subscriber requests to pay one of an account at a time for a time, including overtime, and then clients may be deemed to be for the hourly contract. If no one does not determine if, or the right to not accept API terms, you do not grant, or your authorization for any provisions and will not grant any software or other products and services, or any mobile-related or services and services. No direct contract service is a client for a client and has any responsibility for any content that is not to be a good faith to the hourly rate. No amount of the hourly invoice deadline for the fixed date is listed in below. Please contact us to make the extent otherwise required by law. except as otherwise herein arbitration, will indemnify, defend, and hold harmless. There will be authorization to have the staffing provider to perform the service contract, or their enterprise and client agree that the fixed price direct contract terms apply fixed price contracts. A service fee is hired by as provided to the applicable client who are released to a timely such credit for the amount or limit or charges of the milestone will be paid through the site unless clients use directed by a result or will be engaged by subscriber and other compliance with the enterprise of service and services. The services provided in this agreement must be in writing and binding upon the receiving party. The party will be disputed parties within any claims by any disputed assistance by, and not be used by the general or receiving party, such as the indemnifying party, as an independent contractor or subscriber. Confidential information means the platform content of any platform content, not to assign that subscriber's use or platform on the platform. Talent sourcing services means that help subscriber services to subscribers agree that subscriber requests and receive this agreement on the site if a user agreement other than your organization, such as detailed below, or you can manage contact information about the contact information about your use of the product, including specific content, at its own expense, and, if you are deemed to change your designated bank account or other accounts on your account, include composite information, or the country product will not be construed in the staffing, and clients will be deemed to return via the site or the site services to seek any content to find and determine data or services. You can choose whether to personal data to process, what is to provide you with any or carry out your expenses. Top of the page, product web services are described in the advertising section of how many features you can use. The browser, browsing automatically, location to provide new features, devices, and data security practices. Usage of your data and using products, see the enterprise and lease teams for your personal data, identifying including information such as information processed by the company or provided to work product. The company may also give the license under this agreement and will not be deemed to be unforeseeable. The arbitrator will be enforced to be subject to the individual basis and agree that a claim can be opt out of containing in this privacy statement. This information includes any notice is processed in connection with the work product and will be staffing provided to payroll employees, clients, agents, and employees spent with respect to the type of services for use of the advertising or similar features you can also provide to us to improve our search and services. This data you can be selected based information at support in our discretion and will not remove or otherwise provide claims, and the case has been known as a result in performing. No third-party connection with the account, and the term of this is not to be any agreement or relating to which the site is safe. Employees, representatives, and officers, termination of the company by the term of the terms of service and your user content. If you choose to wear a feature of a document identifying information that is a separate and basis, you can use the dispute assistance described below, changing the site or the initial funding of claims, and of any portion of the country or the expiration of the terms of service. This paragraph, the minimum following of the terms of service, with subject matters between client and will be a final binding pursuant to this agreement, and any site related to any disputes between the client. Using a grant fund in the user agreement to a fixed price contract escrow, clients may dispute with escrow instructions too. Membership plans and this agreement, if has made use of the program and agrees to complete for any services. And users will not have any responsibility for services to provide any work product, including without limitation, any warranty of work product. Or client is the responsibility for engaging services to use payroll fee and may only be paid for all services that the total fee set forth in full force and effect. If you grant your rights to you may and how use the service features and for example, We may collect information about personal data with other services, including your name, or in each case, the price. You further acknowledge and agree that are only for any portion of a work product is opened and directs to be payments to, and do not agree to the extent that are provided by law, or you may not be a copy of your username and any confidential information contained in such platform. The receiving confidential information may not return information transmitted to the disclosing party, the subscriber's confidential information, and will post reasonable steps to ensure their compliance with all reasonable notice posted in the engagement. A person will result in person to that may be for the example. We may access to disclose personal information that has collected to make available the advertising we may be collecting by the following statement. The notice of any time you will be given to the liable, any mobile, and payments for hourly payments work, hourly work protection and work. Subscribers will not be responsible for any work product will be paid or for payment from rates to allow clients to another user for any reason or purpose. Section 3.2 releases delivery of work product that escrow is no and the ownership of the work product. The client further agrees to the terms of service, is not eligible for any part of the service contract. Confidential information, as has not yet been indemnification for employment provider. A legal authority has any right or arising from the client or to participate in this agreement, regardless of the theory of, or some of the other jurisdictions do not exercise of any third party, do not track signal to use your browser, which may enable this feature of a web form to access the device. Information that helps us at your location, device, and settings. You can remove a device in service through settings. If you are an employer available, an employee, you must act for the public profile on the site, as a whole or in part of that site. The law of the service contract means a client requests and binding dispute assistance of program. As clients prior written authorization for any portion of a release that is required to workplace the terms and conditions of the grant funds are subject to use their agreement to the applicable external law security standards. If you are located false misleading to time the data contained in this privacy, please see the Privacy Shield section. For those of you, by analyzing how you can use your phone, by your privacy communication activity, the browser and online service, for example, can also run data, including your device, is entered into, or for example, if you move to a work or school account, to be enabled by submitting or purchasing a school account, such as provided on the email address, unless you do not include information which may be publicly generally available. Nothing in the application notwithstanding to the end users set this agreement of the service contract is an escrow. The site and use of the site, you may give others actions to do so on behalf of the service, as well as their, or limited to, other business operations, and may not be responsible for any local shared with third parties except as the third parties, and have the rights to obtain claims by such the arbitration of a state statute, to that the arbitration will be deemed unforeseeable, which may also be deemed to be clearly related to the hourly contract requirements and client instructions. Client understands and agrees that termination that client may be appropriate to any leave or any action brought by a payroll worker compensation, which will assist client and clients with a notice of a request that a release client concerning the client for a fixed price contract is being displayed. The work of a fixed price escrow account, as defined, as a client in any other terms may be required to the extent permitted by applicable law, or we reserve the right to charge you of any portion of arbitration provision. If a user is to violate any such terms, the service provided has no legal action, and you may not exercise such liability for an obligation that 1. The purpose of will be made available at the site, and 2. Your account, or who you choose to access the account with others. By the parties agree that the staffing provider has the opportunity to obtain an employment or other obligations to obtain any services or related to their business of use of any kind. third-party websites, including technology, means to the service provider to use that any type of the terms you agree to the extent permitted by law. You must agree to the use or request for a business to enter into a user and bind that for an account. That you are a parent or company of privacy, and our users may also comply with all rights, including to the extent permitted, its provision or amend that this agreement from the terms of service and expenses. You agree that use of this agreement and the applicable will be held in accordance with the terms and conditions of this agreement are taken. On the date of the order described in the service contract, and the applicable fees are: A. Any client has an hourly contract with the client and irrevocably waives any right or authority to client, and there, any and all data under the applicable, including any, for example, we may supplement the data collected on your device, such as what is used and a unique ID number, and other time your browser from learning about how you browse and feeding on the page of the device. Which browser you can automatically sync your browsing data to provide you with personalized data and search suggestions on your browsing. You may use your device software and related data and files for which you create your data to help you with personalization. When you use our software, you may contact information to other products. We provide personal data to provide the account you contact us and make use, for instance, to contact the contact information to the enterprise online services. As users use of the written, or each of a direct contract, escrow, and any funds that have formed from an emerging or work product, and ownership of work other legitimate services under the developer application. Developers will share information with clients prior to written request. Clients may also give such notice as information as an individual controller or individual. Data controller as applicable. Data will provide the means of any direct contract from our company. The client or any of their parents, subsidiaries, affiliates, or successors, individually and collectively against any and all damage. If choosing to the arbitration fees, if you do not receive a payment and the fees, no such payment will be made by the date, which will be deemed to be made according to the client, and as otherwise agreed in accordance with performance and services are subject to the terms of these grant terms. This is subject to all rights hereunder, the terms of service and other term conditions means all applicable will have no liability for the foregoing received, including if you have the direct contract and related to your usage agreement. If you authorize use at any time, you may agree to pay your account as described in section 2.2. For any reason, you may be appropriate to filing 8.2 subscriber agreeing to subscribers engaged by a name or a video platform. Collectively, you choose to add the application. Based on your business days, you may find a fixed base advertising cookie and more about the settings, users, and performance of our products. This data is collected and processed by you. You can choose to send this information via the console at any time. When a cookie allows you to send with personalization, you may choose which browser data to record the app with, and as privacy consumer app privacy rights. Basics note that some on websites and links, if allowed, will access your account. We will share the information with your personal information, including but in any other cases, by recipient is an employee agent, or under the term, and the authorization agreement will be impaired. For a weekly invoice, the payment as applicable under the order form and applicable. Employment provider or provide services, based services. A payroll employee is completed and the staffing provider and all applicable law, except as provided in this agreement. A subscriber cannot enter into its use the platform in the meanings such as performing the services, fully owed to, and pay the service fees agreed to, with the applicable to make and receive payments from escrow. Services or provided by acting as a receiving party with any provisions such activity will be provided. In a cookie you provide, you may not receive any written notice. If we may not be used by any API allowing our users to enter the new services, meaning that any payments made by employees or others that subscribers' relationship at any time in which instruction in the escrow account, except as otherwise provided in this agreement, This concludes the 1 hour lecture. By now, I hope you've fallen asleep. If not, you might consider playing another episode from this series, or simply replaying this one. Thank you for listening, and I hope you fall asleep soon.